The signal that shouldn't exist. The USV Vanguard cut through the abyss of deep space, its hull painted in the black void, a ghost among the stars. It was one of Earth's most advanced warships, designed for stealth, speed, and sheer destructive capability. A marvel of Terran engineering. Its presence in this particular sector was supposed to be unnoticed, but someone had just found them. Commander Rebecca Reynolds had been in the service long enough to trust her instincts, and right now, they were screaming at her. "Lieutenant Mara," she said, her voice calm but firm. "Confirm that reading." The bridge of the Vanguard was eerily quiet. Officers sat at their stations, their screens glowing in the dim light, reflecting streams of data that none of them wanted to believe. Lieutenant Mara, the ship's communications and electronic warfare officer, hesitated. I don't know how to explain this, Commander," she said. "The scan came from nowhere." Reynolds narrowed her eyes. "Nothing comes from nowhere, Lieutenant. Trace it." Mara's fingers danced over the controls, recalibrating the ship's scanners, running every possible diagnostic. The results were the same. The scan had originated from everywhere. "It's like it wasn't a single directional scan," Mara continued. "It enveloped us, as if space itself was watching us all at once." That was impossible. No species had the capability to perform a simultaneous omnidirectional scan, not even the most advanced civilizations of the Galactic Council. A scan of this nature would require a technological understanding beyond anything humanity had encountered. "Commander," Mara's voice dropped. "It penetrated our stealth fields." A heavy silence fell over the bridge. The Vanguard stealth technology was the most classified military secret in the Terran arsenal. It was designed to make them invisible to enemy detection, using gravitational distortion fields, quantum scattering, and artificial void refraction to mask their existence from any known scanning technology. If someone had seen through it, it meant humanity was no longer invisible. The ghost in the system. "Lieutenant Cole, confirm ship integrity," Reynolds ordered. Lieutenant Cole, the ship's tactical officer, immediately ran a systems check. "Shields are operational, weapons systems intact, hull integrity remains at 100%, he reported. "But something's off." Reynolds turned toward him. "Define off, Lieutenant." Cole adjusted his display, his jaw tightening. "It's not that they just scanned us, Commander. They scanned everything. Our weapons systems, our reactor output, crew composition, even our classified files, and they did it in under a millisecond." A cold chill ran down Reynolds' spine. That should have been impossible. No species had the computational power to decrypt and process classified military data faster than it was stored. "Did they take anything?" she asked. Mara shook her head. "No, Commander. They didn't extract data. They just looked at it. That was worse. If they had stolen information, it would have meant they were interested in specific details. But scanning everything meant something else entirely. It meant whoever did this already understood what they were looking at." Reynolds exhaled slowly. "Helm, bring us to a full stop. Maintain battle-ready alert." "Aye, Commander," the helmsman acknowledged. The Vanguard came to a halt, floating in the eerie stillness of deep space. Outside, the void stretched into eternity. But something was watching. Why was it so quiet? The galactic trade routes were supposed to be bustling with activity. Merchant vessels, patrol ships, long-haul freighters carrying goods between systems. This section of space had always been active, yet their long-range scanners showed nothing. No civilian chatter, no trade transmissions, not even background radiation. That was when Reynolds realized something far worse than being scanned. They weren't just being watched. The entire sector had been silenced. She turned to Mara. "Check for any ongoing transmissions from nearby star systems." Mara's fingers flew across the console, scanning multiple frequency bands. Her expression turned pale. "Commander," she whispered, "there's nothing." Reynolds narrowed her eyes. "What do you mean, nothing?" Mara looked up, fear creeping into her voice. I mean, the entire sector is dead silent. No signals. No background galactic noise. It's like the universe just stopped talking. That was impossible. Even in the deepest, darkest corners of space, there was always something. Pulsar signals, stray transmissions, cosmic radiation. But here, nothing existed. Whoever had scanned them had also shut down all activity in this sector. That kind of power was beyond terrifying. The unseen presence. Commander. Lieutenant Cole's voice was sharp. New contact. Just appeared on our sensors. Reynolds spun toward the tactical display. On the screen, a single object had materialized out of nowhere, positioned exactly 10,000 kilometers from the Vanguard. It had no identifiable structure. No ship signatures. No mass reading at all. It was as if space itself had folded to create something that had never existed before. What the hell is that? Olivia muttered. Then, without warning, the ship was scanned again. This time, the lights across the Vanguard's bridge flickered. A deep, unnatural hum reverberated through the walls, causing the hull plating to vibrate. Shields up, Reynolds barked. Cole's hands flew across the tactical controls. Shields are at maximum, but it's not touching them. The scan is bypassing everything. Reynolds clenched her jaw. We're being analyzed. This wasn't an attack. This was an experiment, and humanity was the test subject. The decision. They could not stay here. Reynolds took a slow breath, forcing her mind to stay sharp. Whoever, or whatever, had scanned them was operating on a level of technology that should not exist. And they were still watching. Helm, prepare for emergency jump. Get us out of this system, she ordered. The helmsman nodded. Coordinates locked. Mara hesitated. Commander, if we jump blind, we cooled. I know, Reynolds said, but staying here means we don't get a second chance. Mara swallowed. Understood. Then, the unknown object moved. For the first time, it didn't drift or accelerate like a normal ship. It simply blinked, and suddenly, it was 100 kilometers closer. Cole's hands tightened on his console. That thing just moved without crossing space. Reynolds made a decision. Engage the jump. Now. The Vanguard's engines roared to life, the ship's FTL drive surging with power. A blinding distortion of space wrapped around them, and in a single instant, they were gone. The message left behind. As the Vanguard disappeared, the unknown entity remained motionless in space. For a brief moment, it did nothing. Then, a single pulse of energy radiated outward. A message encoded in a frequency that no known species had ever deciphered. It rippled through subspace, traveling across the galaxy. And in the deep, forgotten corners of the universe, the few ancient civilizations that still remembered what it meant began preparing for war. The hunt for the unseen watchers. The USV Vanguard had successfully escaped the unknown entity, but the tension aboard the ship remained palpable. The bridge was filled with the hum of active systems, data scrolling endlessly across holographic displays. Commander Rebecca Reynolds stood near the command console, her mind working faster than her officers could process the situation. They had been scanned. Twice. And whoever, or whatever, had done it had completely ignored their defenses. That wasn't the scary part, though. The real nightmare was that the unknown presence had moved in a way that defied everything they knew about physics. And that meant only one thing. They were dealing with something that shouldn't exist. The aftermath of the escape. Lieutenant Mara wiped a bead of sweat from her forehead as she checked the ship's status. FTL drive is stable, she reported. Jump successful. We're clear of the sector. Cole, the tactical officer, wasn't convinced. Doesn't feel like we're clear, he muttered, still gripping the edge of his console. I've never seen anything move like that before, Commander. Neither had Reynolds. Nothing in the known galaxy moved without crossing space. Even the most advanced civilizations in the Galactic Council had to abide by the fundamental laws of inertia, acceleration, and reaction forces. But this thing, it had blinked into existence, then blinked again to get closer. And worse, it hadn't even needed to fire a shot to disable them. It only had to look. Reynolds took a breath, her grip tightening on the back of her chair. "Lieutenant Mara, status report on our systems. Did we lose anything in the scan?" Mara frowned as she examined the diagnostic report. "Everything is intact, Commander," she said hesitantly. "But something doesn't add up." Reynolds turned toward her. "Explain." Mara chewed on her lip. "We weren't just scanned. Our systems recorded something. Left behind." Silence fell over the bridge. Reynolds' expression darkened. "Left behind." Mara nodded, pulling up the readings. "A residual data packet. Something was written into our systems during the scan." The moment she said it, alarms blared across the ship. An unknown signal had just activated within the Vanguard. The Phantom Code. Every officer on the bridge snapped into action. "Shut it down. Isolate it before it spreads," Reynolds barked. Mara's hands flew over her controls, locking down the affected systems and cutting off the ship's external communications. "Commander, it's not a virus. There's no corruption, no invasive processes," she said. "It's just sitting there." That didn't make sense. If it wasn't a virus, if it wasn't trying to hijack their systems, then what was it? Mara's face paled. "I think it's a message." Reynolds' stomach tightened. A message from something that had effortlessly scanned them, disabled their stealth systems, and moved in a way that no known civilization could explain. What kind of entity left a message like that? And what did it say? Deciphering the unknown. Mara took a deep breath and activated a contained virtual environment to analyze the data. The screen flickered, filled with a sequence of strange symbols, pulses of energy, and what appeared to be sound waves. It was not a language. It was a pattern. Cole leaned closer, his brow furrowed. "That almost looks like music," Mara finished, her voice barely above a whisper. Reynolds' jaw tightened. A musical sequence hidden inside an alien scan. No species in the Galactic Council communicated in this way. Every major civilization had structured linguistic algorithms. But this was something primal, something universal. Reynolds exhaled slowly. "Mara, can you translate it?" Mara hesitated. "I can run it through our database, but if it's based on frequencies rather than words, we might not have the right context." "Do it anyway." As the system began processing the message, something else happened. The lights on the Vanguard's bridge dimmed for a fraction of a second. Then, a voice spoke through the ship's speakers. It wasn't human. It wasn't any known language. And yet, every single person on the bridge understood it. The first words of the unseen. "You are not ready." The words were not spoken, but felt. A deep vibration resonated in the bones of everyone on board, as if the message had been embedded directly into their minds. Reynolds clenched her fists, her pulse racing. "Who are you?" she demanded. No answer. The message continued. "You do not understand what you carry. You must leave this place. Do not return." And then, silence. The strange energy that had lingered in the ship's systems vanished, as if it had never been there in the first place. Reynolds felt cold, not because she was afraid, but because something had just warned them. Something that could talk without speaking. Something that could see without eyes. Something that had let them go. What was the Vanguard carrying? Reynolds turned to Mara, her mind racing. "They said we don't understand what we carry. What does that mean?" Mara's fingers worked fast, pulling up the Vanguard's cargo manifest, checking their ship's entire inventory for anything out of place. And then she froze. "Commander." Reynolds stepped closer. "What is it?" Mara slowly turned to face her, her voice barely above a whisper. "There's something on this ship that isn't supposed to be here. The room went dead silent. Reynolds' heart pounded. "Explain." Mara's screen displayed a cargo module that hadn't been listed on their original mission manifest. It had been added to their ship's inventory after they left Earth. And its origin? Unknown. No one had signed for it. No one had acknowledged its presence. It had just been there the whole time. Reynolds felt the pieces falling into place. The scan hadn't been targeting them specifically. It had been looking for this. Something was on board the Vanguard. Something an unknown force had gone to great lengths to track. And now Reynolds had a sinking feeling that it wasn't supposed to be in human hands. She turned to Cole. "Get a security team to that cargo bay. Now." The final warning. As the security team rushed toward the mysterious cargo hold, the ship's sensors detected something else. The unknown entity that had scanned them was no longer in the sector. But something else was. Something bigger. Mara's voice trembled as she read the new data. "Commander, something just appeared outside our jump point. ****. Reynolds turned toward the main display. And that's when she saw it. A massive structure, larger than any ship ever recorded, had materialized out of the void. Not moving. Not hostile. Just watching. And for the first time in her career, Reynolds realized. They weren't just running anymore. They were being studied. The cargo that wasn't meant for human hands. The USV Vanguard drifted in deep space, surrounded by an eerie stillness that seemed to press against the hull. Inside, Commander Rebecca Reynolds stood motionless on the bridge, staring at the main display. A massive structure had appeared outside their jump point, its form impossibly vast, its silhouette defying conventional understanding of spacecraft. It had no propulsion systems, no visible energy signatures. It was just there. Watching. Waiting. And humanity had no idea why. But the worst part, the mystery wasn't outside the ship. It was inside. In a cargo hold that shouldn't exist. With an object no one on board had ever signed for. An object so dangerous that something beyond their comprehension had tried to warn them away from it. And now Reynolds had to decide what to do next. The cargo bay of secrets. Lieutenant Mara's hands were shaking as she triple-checked the inventory logs. The extra cargo module was real, and it had been on board since they left Earth. But there was no record of it being loaded. No transfer papers. No authorization codes. Nothing. Mara turned to Reynolds, her voice barely above a whisper. "Commander, this wasn't supposed to be on our ship." Reynolds exhaled sharply, her fingers curling into fists. "Security team, report to Cargo Bay 6. Weapons free." Cole, the tactical officer, exchanged a wary glance with her. "Do you really think it's necessary to go unarmed?" he asked. Reynolds' gaze was ice. "You saw what we just encountered, Lieutenant. We don't take chances." A moment later, the bridge comms crackled to life. "Security team in position at Cargo Bay 6. Commander. *******. Proceed with caution." The feed from their helmet cameras flickered onto the main screen. The doors to the mysterious cargo bay hissed open. And that's when the alarms started blaring. The box that shouldn't exist. The security team entered with weapons raised, their lights cutting through the dimly lit cargo hold. Inside, there was only one thing. A metallic container the size of a small transport pod, resting in the center of the bay. It was pitch black, its surface covered in glowing blue runes that pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat. Lieutenant Carson, the lead officer, moved cautiously toward it. "Commander," he said over comms, "you're going to want to see this." The team's body cams zoomed in on the strange symbols covering the container. Mara gasped. Those aren't human markings." Reynolds' expression darkened. "Can you identify the language?" Mara was already running a translation. A moment later, the results came through. And the answer was terrifying. "Commander, this isn't a language we recognize, but the AI system found something close. ******. Reynolds tensed. "Close to what?" Mara swallowed. The closest match we have is ancient pre-council records. This is a dead language from a civilization that was wiped out over 50,000 years ago. A silence crushed the air out of the bridge. Reynolds had read those reports before. Before the Galactic Council, there were other empires. Some rose and fell naturally. But others, they didn't fall. They were erased. The message left behind. The runes on the container flashed brighter. And then, a deep guttural hum reverberated through the ship. The security team staggered back, gripping their weapons as the lights across the Vanguard flickered. Something was activating. Something inside the box. Cole's voice was sharp. "Commander, we need to contain this. Now." Reynolds nodded. "Mara, is there any way to?" She never finished the sentence. Because in that moment, the container began to open. The pulsing blue runes flared violently, then split apart, sending a cascade of energy surging through the cargo bay. The ship's sensors went berserk, readings fluctuating so wildly that Mara could barely make sense of them. But one thing was clear. Something alive was inside, and it wasn't human. The entity awakens. The container's walls peeled away, revealing a floating crystalline object suspended in midair. It was roughly spherical, its surface shifting like liquid metal, pulsing in ways that shouldn't be possible. Every officer in the cargo bay felt the pressure in their skulls increase, as if something was pressing against their thoughts. Then, a voice filled the air, not through the ship's comms, not through sound, but inside their heads. "You should not have brought this here." The words were not spoken. They were felt. Reynolds clenched her jaw. "Who are you?" There was a pause. Then the answer came. "We were the first." Mara's breath hitched. "The first." What? "The first to reach beyond the dark. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. And the first to be silenced. Asterisk, 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 asterisk." The hum in the air grew louder, vibrating through the metal floors of the ship. And then the final words came. "They are coming." And just like that, the entity vanished. The crystal-like object collapsed in on itself, folding into a single point of light before blinking out of existence. And in the same moment, the ship's long-range sensors detected something enormous emerging from hyperspace. The arrival of the Forgotten. Mara's hands flew over the controls. "Commander, we have a massive incoming contact. Unknown designation." She stopped. The screen flickered as the ship's AI tried to classify the object. But instead of a name, the system output a single word. "Unidentifiable." Reynolds' blood ran cold. She turned to the main display and saw it. A titanic structure, far larger than even the largest council dreadnoughts, was materializing out of the void. It was not a ship. It was something else. Something ancient. Something returning. The air felt heavy. And for the first time, Reynolds understood. They hadn't discovered anything. They had opened a door. And now, whatever was behind it, was stepping through.